Welcome to Rotary. With your unique skills and perspective, you are joining a global network of problem solvers, drawn together by a desire to make a difference. Together, we can be bolder. When you share your ideas and connect with others, it's not just your community that benefits. You'll grow as a leader and feel a shared sense of purpose that comes from finding lasting solutions to big problems. Get involved in a way that's meaningful to you. Find a mentor. Sign up for a training. Volunteer in a service project. Or attend a global event. You are now connected to 1.2 million people of action who unite to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. Welcome to Rotary.
Every Rotary project anywhere in the world always started out with one person who had an idea. And then they were able to grow and develop that idea by getting other Rotarians engaged and using that powerful network of Rotary to really change the world.
I want to make a difference, and I see Rotary as being the best vehicle worldwide to be able to make a difference to the community as a citizen of the world.
It's always a blessing to give back what you have received. Rotary is just a sweet place to be. The fellowship, the ability to serve. It's not about how old you are or how much you have.
We don't have to be Prime Minister to lead our country. Even one Rotarian can do lots of things.
People want to feel involved, and that's how they feel that they're actually contributing and giving something back to the society.
Every Rotarian's needs are different. And if we don't know what their needs are, then how are we going to fulfill them?
Right after someone gets in Rotary, you have to start fostering the opportunity for them to take a leadership role, whether they choose to or whether the club chooses them to.
Leader is a role model of everybody.
If you've got the heart, you're going to take your club forward in some fashion. And that's what it's really all about, all of us working together.
Teaching, leading, and then transferring the responsibility of what we are doing to them. The rewards are huge. The satisfaction's enormous. I'm very proud to be a Rotarian.
We are this close.
We are this close.
Tuturek models.
This close to making history.
Ofon Wantinti.
We are this close.
We are this
We're
close.
this close.
This close to changing the world. We are this close to making sure no child suffers a crippling disease ever again.
We are this close to making history.
We are this close to ending polio.
Because we are this close to ending polio.
We are this close to ending polio.
We are this
close to changing the world.
This close.
All we need is you.
Is you.
It's you.
Is you.
We are this close. This close.
Be a part of history at rotary.org/endpolio.
What would it take to change the world? Provide food to the hungry and water to the thirsty. Teach children to read and keep them healthy. Shelter families and train a new generation. Give the poor a chance to better themselves. Create a worldwide network of peacemakers and conquer a disease that has killed or crippled millions. Could one person do it? What about 1.2 million?
My name is Frank Wessel.
Tamara DeWitt.
Gaston Cabot. Pat Draper.
Eu sou Adélia Vilas.
Dr. Naresh Goya.
Meu nome é Awal Mau.
Gary Parrish.
Warren Coffman.
Lisa Simmons.
Eric Kemani.
Meu nome é Eduardo.
Singh Arora.
Megan Coutinho.
These men and women are changing the world. They're members of Rotary. Professionals and community leaders organized into more than 32,000 clubs worldwide. They volunteer at the local, regional, and international levels and dedicate themselves to a simple motto: service above self.
That's what Rotary is all about. Vision to see, faith to believe, and courage to act.
So many of us, we sit back and we go, gee, I'd really like to help somewhere in the world, but I don't know how to do it. And Rotary gives you all the tools you need.
Just the fact that you are a Rotarian opens doors all over the world.
For members of Rotary, no project is too big. Working with UNICEF, the World Health Organization, and the CDC, Rotary has immunized more than 2 billion children against polio and reduced the disease by more than 99% worldwide.
With not too many dollars, these Rotarians and our partners are doing a tremendous job, very effectively, very efficiently.
Rotary has spent more than $500 million on international scholarships and foreign exchange, while its graduate-level programs in conflict resolution train peacemakers from around the world.
When I started working for Interpol at the United Nations, I already had the background to understand international relations.
For Rotary members, the reward is immense and immediate.
Helping others is one of the things that I really enjoy. It makes my day.
The salary I receive spiritually is so huge that you cannot put a value on it.
Being a Rotarian is almost selfish. Yes, I help people, but I get so much in return.
When our world seems senseless and even hopeless, Rotary Club members of all races, colors, and creeds join together to care.
Hopefully we can bring some hope and some help, emotionally as well as physically.
To protect.
The job that is to be done can be done.
To connect.
But no one has a dry eye at the end of these projects because the kids will come back and ask for a picture with their doctor.
And to make a difference.
It is possible because we are Rotarians. We can do it. We should do it.
But even for 1.2 million volunteers, changing the world is no easy task. Learn how you can become involved.
It only takes a drop to make a river. And all we have to do is just make sure that we are in the right direction, we are committed to it, and it will get done.
Rotary International. Ordinary people working together to accomplish extraordinary things.
Hello, family of Rotary and guests, and welcome to Infinite Possibilities, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, presented by District 6960 and co-sponsored by Rotary Zones 33 and 34. I am Stephanie Yurchik, Rotary International Director for Zones 3334, and I am very proud of this initiative and of the team that produced 4 seminars last fall, highlighting some phenomenal women in our organization and focusing on women in Rotary. Those sessions were all about women in Rotary and not just for women in Rotary. It was hugely successful and opened the door for our newest membership initiative, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, which begins today and will run through April 30th, 2021. Hopefully, you've been with us for prior seminars. In July, we hosted Dr. Sylvia Whitlock, the first female Rotary Club president who caused a sensation in both the California and US Supreme Courts, resulting in Rotary International allowing women to come into membership. In August, we hosted Jenny Stotts, a troublemaking, but in a good way, millennial who encouraged us all to find our Rotary happy and advocated for our Rotary clubs to mirror our communities, an important point in today's conversation. In September, past Rotary International Vice President Dean Roars gave a powerful presentation as she shared her personal journey and how it set the stage for future involvement and leadership at the highest levels of Rotary. We rounded our series in October with the incomparable Rotary International President nominee, Jennifer Jones, our first female president of Rotary International, who led a discussion filled with vision and inspiration. To all four of these women, we are grateful for their participation in Infinite Possibilities and for highlighting what we all can do to make the world a better place. Our Rotary International theme for this year is Rotary Opens Opportunities. All you need to do is walk through that door to find like-minded people who want to make the world better, just like you do. Rotary is a platform. You are the difference, and we invite you to join us. Before I introduce our host for today, just let me say thank you once again to District 6960 Governor Darrell Keys and past District Governor Cindy Dora for their leadership in putting these series together and for keeping membership in our organization on the front burner for us all. And now it's my honor and privilege to introduce today's moderator, Rotary International Director Valarie Wafer, who also serves as the chair for Rotary International's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force. Welcome, Valarie.
Thank you, Director Stephanie, and welcome to the over 1,000 participants who have registered and joined us today for another outstanding presentation on membership growth and retention. Rotary International at its very inception was built on the concept of diverse membership represented by our vocations. But today, the conversation of diversity means something quite different and is reflective of our understanding that each individual is unique and recognizing that our differences are our strengths. I'm excited to be with you today. We're going to have a wonderful conversation with our panelists that I'll introduce in a moment. Please remember to use the Q&A button on your screen to ask questions, and we hope to get to many of them following our panel discussion. And also remember, this session is being recorded because it's going to be a great and useful resource to continue this conversation. So it is my pleasure now to introduce our three panelists. Joshua Innes is currently a mechanical engineer in training and a dual member of the University Rotaract Club in Alberta, Canada, and the Rotary Club for Global Action. Rhea Vandisic is from Croatia, and she's a past Rotary Youth Exchange student, leader in Interact, and actively involved in Rotaract through Eastern Europe. Paul Amore started his Rotary career in the Bahamas, but currently resides in the state of Virginia, USA. Paul was paralyzed as a teenager, and throughout his life, he has been physically challenged. Through his experience, he recognizes each day as a gift, and his positive attitude changes the lives of everyone he encounters. We appreciate each of you joining us today, and so let's get started. When someone says strength lies in our differences, they're referencing the power of diversity. If one were to belong to a group of people, all from the same age group, similar income levels, same ethnic background, and all living in the same community, you would notice that their views and ideas are very similar. The advantage of a more diverse group is that each individual can contribute from lived experience that is obvious to them, but completely new and surprising to others. It's amazing to think what solutions we can learn from that. Therefore, my first question is based on that very statement, that strength lies in differences and not similarities. What is your opinion of that statement? And can you provide an example that supports your thinking? Josh, let's start with you.
Sure. So first things first, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. To kind of answer the question, I think that when you have a homogenous looking society, you present opportunities for blind spots. Whereas, when you have the opposite, you really do have somebody looking from all angles, from all perspectives, and you're able to kind of withstand challenges and come up with solutions that you may not have had otherwise. I use like some kind of like cute examples when you look at every metaphor in every Disney movie where the person with the unique quality is the one that solves whatever problem is facing the society. So it may not be as distinct as Nemo fitting through the water filter, or as like in contrast as Batman and Superman, but those teams are that much stronger because they have uniqueness in their diversity.
That's great. We each do have our own identity or our own superpower. So I love your analogy, Josh. Rhea, how about you? How do you feel our strength lies in our differences?
Well, I would like to say thank you for having me first, as well as Josh. I would absolutely agree with Josh. I think it is the beauty of different approaches, ideas, and backgrounds that ultimately produces the most valuable results, So I can understand that people feel very comfortable when they're surrounded by those who are similar to themselves. And we all have that tendency to do that every day, whether it's our friends or, whoever we affiliate with. But I think it's that sense of security that often prevents us to push ourselves and our ideas and our actions beyond our comfort zone, which is where the biggest success, I think, comes from. Maybe just from like my personal experience as a Rotary Youth Exchange student way back in 2009, there was a great event in my high school in Venice, Florida, that was called Unity Day, that included students from various backgrounds who were nominated by their teachers and who came together one day and participated in a series of workshops that were aimed, at promoting unity. So I had a chance to participate being the foreign exchange student in the school, and it was just an amazing thing to see because there were kids, from various backgrounds, whether it was ethnic backgrounds or, different cultural aspects, even financial aspects, that came together as complete strangers. And just through one day of open conversations and giving each other a chance to present themselves, we literally came out as friends. Some of my best friends from Florida, where I met them on that day. So it was just a great thing where we embraced our differences, but built on them. And it really produced, valuable and long-term results in my life.
That's a great example, Rhea. Sometimes we need to be intentional to create those safe environments where we can have that conversation. And I think that's something that we can really do in our Rotary clubs and in our districts. I think that's a great example of how we can be comfortable with our sameness. Paul, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, Rotary does things. As long as I've been a Rotarian, which was most of my life, we always do something. We always build something or fix something or help somebody with something. Well, if you're building a house, you don't have one person building the house. You have a carpenter, the plumber, the electrician. There are 100 different people who have to go to build this house. Well, that's how it works with Rotary. Not one Rotarian can do anything, but 10 Rotarians could do a multiple of things. So that's how we get things done, because there's not just one kind of Rotarian, there's 10 of us. And each one does something for the whole pie to get together and make it happen.
I completely agree with you, Paul. I think our diversity brings that creativity and it leverages everyone's talents. As you described in building a house, it really needs our collective talents to move us forward. Any other comments before we move on to the next question? No? Okay, great. Off to a great start. I feel like we're in a room just having a conversation, which is exactly the way this should be evolving. So thank you for that. Martin Luther King once said, "Life at its best is a creative synthesis of opposites in fruitful harmony." So my understanding and perspective of this is directly related to innovation. A diversity of thought leads to a different level of problem solving, exactly the way innovation actually flourishes. So what are your thoughts on this? How innovation flourishes when we are diverse? Rhea, let's start with you. What are your thoughts?
I absolutely agree that diversity of thought can positively influence innovation, and it definitely does, in every single aspect. But I would personally look at that concept from a much broader perspective as well. I think that diversity of thought, if encouraged and expressed, politely, and as people in Rotary like to say, in goodwill, it helps humanity grow in every possible way. So it's not just ideas necessarily that flourish, but it's human relationships as well. So if we can all express our ideas as equals and discuss them openly, I think everyone wins. Doesn't necessarily mean that we have to agree with each other completely or even reach a consensus, because that's not always possible. But I think what matters is only that we listen to each other openly and, try to understand the background, like those basic principles the other person bases their opinions on. And I think that produces amazing results, not necessarily just in innovation, but absolutely including innovation. I think it just makes everything flourish in general. So I would definitely agree with that statement.
Great. Paul, how about you? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, again, it's a matter of perspective. If I'm looking at a focal point, I see it from one view. But if 10 of us are looking at it from a different side of the box, we're actually not looking at the focal point. We're looking outside the box. And that makes innovation exponential. You can't even imagine how wide the view is now, because now there's 10 of us looking at it from so many angles. You just can't lose.
I completely agree. Couldn't agree more. Josh, how about you? Round out this question.
Yeah, I really like what the others have said as well. But when I first heard this, I kind of wanted to take it a different direction, especially because it's a Martin Luther King Jr. quote. So he was talking about opposites working in fruitful harmony. I think a lot of what he inspired people to do in the face of such violence and such brutality kind of would go against your human nature. He's inspiring people to be peaceful at a time where you're not being shown any peace. And when I think about that in relation to Rotary and trying to think outside of the box, there's going to have to be a certain amount of work that goes into building bridges with people in different communities that maybe you've never understood before, or you haven't worked with before. And at first it may seem like going against what's natural for you. It may feel a little bit opposite to what you're used to, but I think that's one of the ways that we grow, and that's one of the ways that that we can continue to learn and understand and work with each other.
Great insight from each of you. Let's move on to the next question. Inclusion is the tangible effort that leads to equity. Can you provide us with examples of how inclusion has shaped your world? Paul, let's start with you.
Well, to begin with, being paralyzed is a big thing. When I first became paralyzed, I had no idea what I was up against. And when I came back to the Bahamas from rehab, I realized how I was not included in almost anything, because people in the Bahamas at that time, that was 45 years ago, did not see anyone in a wheelchair as someone who was viable at all. So I had to fight for that. And by doing that, I found people want to include others. They just don't know what the possibilities are. And I think that every Rotarian, every human has to say to everyone, look, just try to see it on a different angle. Try to understand that we are different. We're all different because we're made differently. And it's not bad to be you, but it's good to see someone else for who they are and what they are, and open your mind to be able to believe that they can do more than you think they can do. And that inclusion makes a world of difference, because now not only you're included in something, but the other person now has a bigger view of life. They can actually say to themselves, wait a minute, my vision was so tunneled and now it's opened. They themselves can find themselves vastly better than they were before. So I think it's up to us to open that vision to others.
Yeah. And no, I agree with you, Paul. People don't want to exclude others. For the most part, our bias is learned behavior, and we can unlearn it. And it's through conversations and including those who we haven't seen in our Rotary clubs that opens our eyes. And it takes constant effort, there's no doubt. So thank you for your comments. Josh, how about you?
Yeah. I think, obviously inclusion is great. I think one way that we can think about that and work towards that is shifting the idea from I to we. I think that when we start to see things as this is for our common benefit, we're all working towards something great here. And how much greater would we be if we included more people, we included more perspectives? Like, what could we accomplish? And I just think that it's kind of a powerful tool that will just really help you gain perspective.
Now, Josh, you and I have served on a panel before, so we've been introduced in the fall, and we had a lot of fun with that. And you told a very compelling story and a very great example of how inclusion and equity need to be looked through sometimes through different lenses other than our own. Would you share that story with us?
Definitely. So we had talked, we were talking about basically the different struggles and the different perspectives that different groups may have. So I myself, as a Black male, would have a different perspective and have gone through different experiences than, let's say, a white woman. And, going through the Me Too movement a couple of years ago really gave me some perspective that there would have been no other way for me to have learned otherwise. I could have asked friends and whatnot, but seeing the scale of that really opened my eyes and gave me the opportunity to kind of step back, look and listen and learn. And I really appreciated that. Sometimes it's really easy to be siloed, to be thinking of just it's just like, the world is just against me. But everybody is going through different things. And it's really, really powerful to be able to humble yourself, take a step back and say, no, this is my time to listen, right?
Thank you so much for sharing. So powerful. Rhea, let's hear your perspective on how inclusion has shaped your world.
Absolutely. I just want to say that what Josh and Paul have said has truly been profound. And I think my perspective might be different in a way. I think I'm very privileged, not just, being a white, middle-class woman living in Europe, which is, not a very discriminated against group. Maybe the women part in some aspects, but in general, I think I'm very, very privileged. And just being able to recognize that I am privileged, I think, is the first step towards including others. Because until we realize that we're not necessarily, standing on the same steps, let's put it that way, that some people are by default put in lower positions just because of, what they look like or what they believe in. I think when you recognize where you kind of stand, you can kind of help change that and equalize all that. And so I think from my perspective, that's the first thing, to recognize that I am privileged in so many ways. But as the guy said, I think the first big step towards inclusion would be openness to different people, to other people, and just not thinking that we know what it's like, because I think we all kind of do it in a way. I can say, oh yeah, I know, African American people are in a bad position in this and that way, but I really can't know that. I have, friends who are African American and they can tell me, but still that would not, it doesn't put me in their shoes. And just working on that trying to gain their perspective, trying to listen to what they have to say, whether it's, I just gave an example of African Americans, but it can be any group that's discriminated against. Just listening to their perspective and not presuming that we know what it's like. I think that is a great step towards equity and towards inclusion.
And I think you've just really highlighted the importance of these conversations. I mean, even amongst us, we're learning from each other. We met last week very briefly, and every time we have a conversation, it's like we just have that little extra takeaway and learning from each other. So that's why these panel discussions are so important, and the discussions that we have day to day. Anyone else have any input to that question before we move on?
Nothing really other than great responses from everyone.
Great responses. I think this is a great conversation. Okay, let's go on to the next question. The journey to equity is a never-ending struggle. This means at some point in the not too distant past, you face barriers to inclusion and indeed may still face barriers. Can you comment on that and perhaps give us some of the strategies that you use to fight bias? Josh, we're going to start with you.
Sure. So questions like these are really tough because, in a certain essence, you're asking somebody to kind of recount traumatic experiences or experiences where they felt really uncomfortable to be themselves. So I won't necessarily answer like my own personal experience when it comes to that, but I will share the strategies that I share to kind of overcome biases. The first thing that I try to do is relate with whichever person. Well, even if they're showing you the least bit of respect or the utmost disrespect, you need to show them just how human you are and how similar you are to them. And it makes them uncomfortable because they realize, wait a second, if I'm doing this to this person who's really not that different from me, would I do the same thing to my friend, to my partner, to my parents, to myself? We're all connected. So, what you do to me is really a reflection of the behavior that you would do to yourself. So yeah, that's my strategy.
Great. Paul, let's move to you on that question.
Well, again, I'm going to use my disability. Being in a wheelchair, people can see that I'm disabled, but there are so many people in the world who have something that they can't do. And that being their disability, you may not know that. So you have to think to yourself about each person that you, again, we're going back to the open-mindedness. Each person in the world that you ever meet, before you even think about anything, you have to not have prejudgments of them. You have to say to yourself, like when I meet Josh, I don't think anything about him. I just listen to who he is. And then when you see each person for what they are, it changes everything. The way your own perspective is just so different. And it means that now they can be your friend. If you meet your enemy, you have to say to yourself, who is this person? Not that they're my enemy. Because someone becomes your enemy because of something they do or say, not because of who they are. So you know that if they haven't done or said anything that makes them your enemy, they must be your friend.
I couldn't agree with you more. Studies have shown that our brain can only comprehend so many different stimuli that comes at us every day. And that's where really our bias falls into. And so you're absolutely right, Paul. When somebody sees you, they can see that you're in a wheelchair, but that's where it should end. That's not the judgment of Paul. That is the observation. And so having that open mind as to not set those preconceived notions or bias and let them influence us is so important. Rhea, let's go to you.
Absolutely. You know what, you saying that the journey to equity is a never-ending struggle actually right now reminded me of a quote from Harry Potter that says that sometimes we must choose between what is right and what is easy. And I think those are the choices that we have to make, on a daily basis, basically. There sure are many, many obstacles in the way of achieving equity, but that doesn't mean that equity is not the goal that we all must strive to achieve. So in my opinion, going back to the strategies, I think the best way to fight prejudice and stereotypes is through hands-on experience. Because I think it's very hard to insist on our wrongly founded beliefs when we get the chance to meet someone who belongs to our stereotypical group and yet is nothing like what we imagined. You know, I think nothing breaks down our barriers more than actually meeting a person that's very different from the stereotype we have of them. So our education and exposure to those who are different to us and emphasizing our similarities while still showcasing our differences, as you all said, you know, noticing someone's skin color or, you know, someone's physical disability. Okay, we need to acknowledge that that exists, absolutely, because that in a way also is part of who we are, but it's not all what we are, you know, it doesn't determine who we are. It doesn't say anything about the person itself. So I think definitely showcase our differences, but emphasize our similarities. And I think that's the best way to break down barriers, you know, see people behind the false labels that we so often attribute them. And also, I think, I honestly don't think that the journey to equity and inclusion is as difficult as commonly thought. I just think people sometimes like to exaggerate in saying how difficult it is, because when we say it's, oh, that's so difficult, well, it kind of gives us an excuse to not even try. So I think we all have, you know, that inside of us instilled, me absolutely as well. When we say something's too difficult, well, that gives us a way out, you know, like a joker, that we don't have to necessarily deal with that. And I think that's, you know, a big thing to kind of realize and maybe try to stop doing. So that would be kind of my personal experience and strategy in that.
Oh, that's excellent. Any other comments before we move on to the next question? Great answers.
Just be brave.
Honestly. Go ahead, Paul.
Just have to be brave.
Absolutely. All right. So next question. Since so much of what we see as racism, intolerance, or discrimination is based on unconscious bias, what strategies do you use to help shift those stereotypes into a force of good? Josh, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, unconscious bias works both ways. So representation is incredibly important. Just kind of going off on a side, in 2018, when the Black Panther movie came out, like I was floored. Like for me, like it was just like, you know, finally, can we see ourselves represented honestly, like in a cool way, that people could look up to, and it was like the top grossing movie at the time. I was like, you know, this was made like not only for me, but for other people to truly see me and to see like who we are for who we are. And yeah, you'll notice the poster, but whatever. But yeah, I think that the more opportunities that we get to see other people represented for who that they really are, and other people telling their own stories, I think the better. I think, you know, we're just training our brains to truly understand people. So.
Great, excellent. Rhea, how about you?
Absolutely agree with Josh. As I mentioned earlier, I would always start with education and hands-on exposure, which is similar to some of what Josh was saying. But I think that it really is the basis of everything, because most of the bad things in this world come from fear and lack of knowledge, primarily, I think. So once that gap is surpassed, those negative traits we often attach to people suddenly tend to lose a big part of their negativity. You know, once you actually learn more and give people a chance to present themselves, you'll see that a lot of the things that you had preconceived about them might not, you know, stand anymore. I also think another huge thing is using facts and kindness as tools for disarming hateful people. Just, you know, never go on their level, just because bullies usually know how to deal with other bullies, but tend to find their strategy lacking when faced with a kind approach. So I would personally just go from there. Education, hands-on exposure, and kindness primarily, because I think we really need that in the world right now.
Great strategies. Paul, let's hear from you.
That's absolutely true. In all of my years of advocacy, 99% of it is education. just telling people what it really is, because misconceptions are, you know, this is what we have. We have people that have been taught misconceptions, and once they know the truth, they just change their mind. I don't think people in general are mean. I think they learn to be mean. And I think they don't want to be mean. They want to be kind. They want to be helpful. And so if they learn something better, they're willing to go with it.
Great, thanks. We're going to move on to our last question before the Q&A. So how do you respond to those who believe they've solved the problems of intolerance? I can't help but giggle, sorry. Who believe their institutions or workplaces don't have systematic racism or systematic intolerance. Rhea, let's hear your thoughts.
Well, primarily, I think it's great to acknowledge the progress the institutions or workplaces have made when it comes to, eradicating intolerance or inequity and all those things. I think that's great, and we should all be proud, about the progress we are making. However, I think that the work in that field is never truly done, and thinking anyone has achieved it is like standing on a trapdoor and, waiting to pull the lever yourself. So I think there are always more things to learn, more areas to improve, and more biases to become aware of. So I would definitely, try to kind of emphasize that to people. But I think that the only time that we will ever be successful in solving the problems of intolerance will be when we recognize that we still have a long way to go. So I think that the strive for equity is an ideal, and that is unfortunately hardly ever completely fulfilled, but it is an ideal that we're striving towards, and progress should be emphasized, and we should be proud of it. However, while realizing that we still have a lot of work to do.
Paul, how would you weigh into this?
That's absolutely true, Rhea. I totally agree with her. She's right on with it. This is a battle that's never going to be over, and we can only keep fighting the battle and keep teaching and keep being a good person and showing people that goodness can come from goodness, and that we just have to expand that goodness.
Josh, final words to you on this question.
Yeah, if it's tough. I won't lie to you. But I think I would ask the question, who do you think the most dangerous type of person is out there? It's not the person who shows up in your face. It's not the person who tells you they don't like you outright. It's the person who looks like your friend, right? And that's what makes it harder. And you don't have to be that person. You don't have to be the one who is, I guess, not supportive in the times that they need to be, because they haven't taken the time to understand. Yeah, I think it's tough. But I think also it's good to find your allies, find the people that truly are kind of behind the idea, and work as a group. Like, you don't have to change the world by yourself. And also your allies may not look like you once expect them to. Like, one example I love is like the K-pop band that is like super involved in all of this. Maybe your stereotypical conservative looking person is having changes of heart, and it's really important to be able to recognize the goodness so that you can take on more challenges, like people who say there's no problem, right? And you do that much better with the team. So
yeah, this was such an excellent conversation. I think that all the people on the line today can see that this panel was very intentionally put together for their different perspectives, but they've just really added to the conversation today. So that concludes our formal conversation with our three panelists. And now I'd like to introduce District Governor Darrell Keys to moderate the Q&A portion of this segment.
Thank you, Valerie, and also to each of our panel members. What a phenomenal conversation that really was. Wow. We expected it to stimulate thought, and I think it's really knocked it out of the park in that respect, and we've certainly not been disappointed with the content today. So for the Q&A, as a reminder, please ask your question in the Q&A box. You can see that at the bottom, it says Q&A, and please type it in there, and we'll cover as many as possible. We're not going to get through all these today, but we'll try and get back to them at some point in future. But let's kick off with the first one. And this concerns really how we can take diversity, equity, and inclusion into clubs. And the question really is, how could we initially raise the idea of emphasizing diversity, equity, and inclusion in the culture of a club when it's not been emphasized in the past? How do we start it?
Great question. Who wants to take a stab at the answer? Paul.
I think it starts with you. I think you have to say to the club, I'd like our club to be better. I'd like it to be more. And no matter what the ruckus that causes, you have to be strong and unafraid and just stick to your guns and say, our club can be better if we just open it up.
I can add to that. I was just gonna say, yeah, that's a really good, that's very introspective to say it starts with you, because it really does. And then, as I said before, you find more people, and that movement kind of grows. But also, it's really important for clubs to think of their group as kind of like a colorful mosaic of distinct pieces and pictures, and how do we get that right? And like, really, how well are we doing to foster that, I guess?
I would personally go back to the four-way test. I think that's always a great thing to start. You know, use their own weapons against them, kind of thing. No, but genuinely, when you go back to it, just go to, you know, is it the truth? Well, when you go to inequity or discrimination, it's not. And then, you know, moving on to, is it fair to all concerned? Well, that's a big one, because it absolutely isn't. If we have a very, you know, a club that it's pretty much looks like they're all twins amongst themselves, there's no equity and no inclusion of anyone who's different from the norm. I think just going back to the four-way test proves that that's not the way it's supposed to be, and kind of maybe start from there. But I mean, any beginning is going to be difficult, you know. It's not going to be easy. You're not going to say, hey guys, we need to include different people, and everyone's going to be like, wow, yeah, great idea. That usually doesn't happen. People are more reserved, and it takes time to break out of that comfort zone. But again, I think it's just a matter of putting yourself out there. And as Paul said, you just kind of have to go through with it.
Well, thank you for that. A follow-up question now is, how do you respond to the person in the club who says, I'm not prejudiced?
Well, I can say that. If you actually say you're not prejudiced, I mean, it's not something that has to be said. Either you are or you aren't. And if you aren't, you don't have to say it. Everyone knows it.
I would just add that, yeah, 100%. And this goes back to our question about like organizations that say that they don't have any biases and whatnot. You know, no one is immune. To believe that is, you know, a form of self-harm, to be totally honest.
Agreed. Beautifully said.
Okay, so how would you advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion in a single gender club?
Should I go, being the female here and presuming that the single gender club are not usually female? So from that perspective, again, I think it's just about emphasizing we do have differences, you know, gender-wise, and I think that each person brings something new. And there is, I think, a great deal of perspectives and things that women can bring to every club that's just a tad bit different, like that special approach that necessarily men are more like logical, straightforward, and things like that. women will bring that some kind of like a different touch to it that can bring a lot of good things. So I think it's just maybe emphasizing the good things that could come out of it, and maybe giving some examples, or providing, you know, a background to what you're saying, giving some examples of successful women in the past who have done amazing things, and just trying to connect that with the reality we're all living in right now. Not necessarily have 50-50 membership right away, but just start, you know, baby steps, and kind of push through with it. I think that's kind of the best way to do it.
Thank you for that. A question specifically aimed at Joshua. How do you see systemic racism playing into this conversation?
I think I kind of understand the question. I'm not sure if it's related to the last question. I don't think so. Systemic racism is, to find the words for it, because I don't want to call it a powerful force, but it is so ingrained, and it's been around for so long. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't just the events of 2020. You know, this wasn't just, you know, Trayvon Martin when I was his age, and my parents told me to, you know, never wear a hood, kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, systemic racism really is at the root of a lot of, like, what we're really seeing is symptoms, right? Yeah, I mean, this is such a broad question. I could talk about this for an hour. But yeah, I think that it's really important to acknowledge that there are forces much deeper than surface, and that's really what we're working for, and working against, and working together to overcome. And that is a never-ending process, and that's what we're committing to, and that's why I would hope that people are committing to and getting on board with.
Yeah, thank you, Joshua. I really appreciate that. So now we've got a question about tokenism. And it's a question about whether you've experienced tokenism, which is obviously a superficial actions which are taken to make it look as though you're really encouraging diversity and equity and inclusion, but it's very superficial. Have you experienced that, and how would you deal with it?
I can go first. I mean, yes, I have experienced that. To deal with it, really, if you are in a position where you feel tokenized, but for whatever reason you are now on that group, or you're on that board, or whatever, use your power. Absolutely, and invite more people in with different ideas and whatnot. You know, even if it wasn't a straight path for you to get there, you can do better for the generations after you.
This is true. You have to take the wins you can get. Sometimes it, like Rhea says, it's the little baby steps.
Thank you.
Sure.
A question possibly that maybe for Valarie, actually. And it's, does Wonderful Rotary International provide a DEI playbook for clubs?
So, as in my introduction, Director Stephanie mentioned that I'm the chair of the Global Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force for Rotary International. And, you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion looks different all over our organization. It looks very different in Japan than it looks in Europe, than it looks in North America. And so really, this effort is really a grassroots effort where we are seeing so many districts initiate their own diversity, equity, and inclusion committees, dealing with their community issues. And really, that's what's going to drive change in our Rotary Club. And that's really the exciting thing that we're seeing happening right now. But it also takes leadership. It also takes leadership from Rotary International to emphasize the importance of being diverse, of being inclusive, and to give permission for these conversations, these difficult conversations, and sometimes uncomfortable conversations to happen, and know that the issues and some of the positive success stories, but also some of the issues that are coming out of conversations at the club level, that we need to be able to support you know, the action and the consequences of that behavior. because it's against the values of Rotary to act in these ways. So I think it comes from both sides. There's leadership certainly at the club and district level, and then there's the tone from the top where we are supporting all the work to move us in the right direction of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Thank you, Valerie. So now there's a question about how do we find these groups or diverse people to actually engage with, to bring them into clubs?
I can start in saying that you don't have to look far, and maybe maybe you just need to change your lens. Yeah, I think that the way that question is framed is kind of in a defeatist attitude and just like, oh, there's nobody around, like what are we gonna do? Like that's never the situation. You just need to change your ideal of what your ideal club member or whatever would look like. Yeah, absolutely.
And as a Rotarian for a long time in my life, when you invite somebody to Rotary, it doesn't matter who they are, whether they're white or black or Asian or crippled or blind or deaf or mute. It matters that they're your friend and they have the qualities of a Rotarian. And you say to yourself, I want this person to be a Rotarian. And you bring them to the club and the club doesn't like it. I'm sorry, I don't want to be a part of that club because this man I can vouch for. I would not bring him or her or a woman into a club if I couldn't vouch for them.
Right.
And the fact that you vouched for me to be a Rotarian, you should trust me on this.
Thank you for that. Really appreciate that answer, Paul. As always, sadly, time has dictated we can't cover all of the questions that you've posed today, but we will try and get back to each of you on the questions that you've typed into the Q&A box. So I'd just like to say thank you again to Rotary International Director Valarie, Joshua, Rhea, and Paul for just an outstanding participation in this program today. And thank you so much for taking up the time and for being committed to this program. And now I'd like to turn over to our Rotary International Director, Peter Kyle, for some important information you should be aware of. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Daryl. And thank you, Valerie and the panelists. This was outstanding. Very impressive presentation. I see there are many, many questions yet to be answered. I think we can take a lot of pride in the quality of the panel today. So thank you all very much. Just a few other comments. These seminars have been designed to introduce you to a great organization represented by our incredible speakers. But Rotarians are people of action, and we also want you to take action. So I'd like to suggest the following 2 or 3 steps that you should consider. First, please contact past District Governor Pete Dora to find out more information about the Rotary Action Group, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. This action group is in the process of being created, and we're looking for really good people to become involved. We're also, as part of this series, we are supporting the Zones 33 and 34 Rotary Works initiative, which is a new initiative started by my friend and colleague, Rotary International Director Stephanie Urchik, to provide a hands up to Rotarians and Rotaractors experiencing career transition. Contact information to support this very worthy endeavor is on your screen. Rotarians serving Rotarians. What could be better than that? Next, if you're not a Rotarian, you should be. Please contact past District Governor Cindy Dora, or reach out to a local Rotary Club to find out more about how you can join the club and join this wonderful organization. We need you, but more importantly, your local communities need you. And finally, strive to do more. Lean in and step up to leadership positions. Your clubs and your communities need new leaders. So we're looking to you to join us in this wonderful Rotary journey. Thank you. And now I pass over to PDG Cindy Dora.
Thank you so much, Peter. We appreciate you. We appreciate Stephanie and Valerie. To Governor Darrell, thank you so, so much. We can't express enough to Josh and to Rhea and to Paul how dynamic your presentation was today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, Rotary clubs need to represent their communities. Rotary clubs need to reach out, and remember, this membership initiative involves everyone you come in contact with. This is how we grow. This is how we get stronger. And this is how we improve the diversity, equity, and inclusion that every club in Rotary really needs. Every Rotarian needs to give time, talent, and your treasure to make the world a better place. See the world through the eyes of the three panelists today and recognize each one of them brings so much power and energy to this program and to what Rotary represents. We want our Rotary clubs to mirror not only the neighborhoods and help change the discussion from what can't be done to what can be done, what will be done within yourself, within your club, your communities, and indeed around the world. This series has been amazing. This is the first for diversity, equity, inclusion, but we want to bring up the slide and tell you there's 3 more coming your way. And we're just going to continue to open this line of communication as a membership initiative so that our clubs will broaden the representatives that they have and the members that they have in their clubs. Please register early. You don't have to wait till just before the event. We have the dates on there. We have the registration information on there. If you're not a Rotarian, just let us know. We'll be sure that you receive an invitation to participate. And Rotary clubs recognize you can use this series as a program. So go back and use it as a program for your club to teach and gain more insight into diversity, equity, and inclusion. Also, please remember that for your convenience, the Zones 3334 website is available to you. Obviously, the videos are all recorded, so you can go back and listen and participate and take great notes and share the programs. But the most important thing we want to leave you with today, which has been expressed throughout, is you can make a difference. We can make a difference. We are Rotarians. We are people of action. So won't you please join us? And won't you please help us broaden the horizons and share the great word about accepting and embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion. On behalf of District 6960 in Zones 33 and 34, we thank you for joining us today and have a wonderful weekend. Take care. Stay healthy. Bye-bye now.